So I've been playing drums for about 30 years, maybe a little bit more. 20 of those have been professional. I'd say it was a little bit slow to get started. I did some waitressing as well, but basically, yeah, I've been playing that whole time. The day after my 18th birthday, my parents took me to my first gig, which was I was the house drummer in a jazz jam session in Lambeth. So playing behind anyone who came up, which was great. So that was really, really good experience. I did that for 7 years on and off. But going further back, I started, showing signs. My parents would say when I was 7 or 8, listening to music and sort of tapping out rhythms, getting the chopsticks from the kitchen drawer, and playing on the sofa, getting the pots and pans out. And my parents always played really interesting music. They still love it. They still come to my gigs now. They came on Sunday night and they'll come later in the week. So I was hearing definitely a lot of Beatles, which is very varied in itself. You get a lot of different styles, some odd time signatures, great grooves from Ringo, and really interesting music. They were also playing a little bit of jazz. So again, Dave Brubeck, a lot of interesting rhythms happening there, as we know. And Oscar Peterson, people like that. So I was hearing a lot of great stuff. And my brother was playing a lot of piano. So he was going through all the Scott Joplin repertoire. And again, as we know, that was the start of syncopation, really, wasn't it? So people were starting to think, oh, hang on, what's happening here? And that different influence was massive. So my brother would be practicing all these Scott Joplin pieces on the piano, and I'd be listening and thinking, oh, that's interesting, and sort of memorising the melodies. And maybe occasionally he'd let me sort of tap along. I say let me, he's a lovely guy, my brother Toby. So yeah, there was a lot of exposure. I was really lucky, and my parents, also being antique dealers, had a keen eye for if there was an old guitar somewhere or some percussion instruments, they'd get those and they'd be lying around in the front room at home. So my brother and I always had access to not fancy instruments, but just it was natural, it was all there, and we could pick things up if we wanted, and it was a really nice environment, I must say. I'm very lucky. Primary school, lovely school in Southfields called St Michael's, where interestingly enough Jason Rebello went a few years earlier. My brother and I were there, and the music teacher, Sheila Johnson, was a really big supporter of him and me. She sort of saw that we had some musical talent, and she tried to include us as much as possible in assemblies and things. So my brother would be playing the piano. I'd sometimes, tap along. They had not a full drum kit, but, a hi-hat, not both of them, and a bass drum without the pedal and a snare. And it's lovely. I treasure those memories, because it wasn't like I had a high-end kit and just sat down and thought, oh, right, is this it? I really, really got excited about what they had. And she encouraged us both. And she also let me operate the tape machine in assembly, which might sound like a snooze fest, but the turning point for me was when she had a Stevie Wonder cassette, and at the end of assembly played Isn't She Lovely? So I pressed play, and it was an epiphany. I thought, what is this? This is incredible. And there began my love affair. I went home that night saying, do you know this guy, Stevie Wonder? Oh, yes, Soph, hang on. And, there was a vinyl of Songs in the Key of Life, and my dad had a cassette of that and Innovisions, and I just obsessively listened to those. Just a little aside, I have there Chick Corea's copy of Songs in the Key of Life. I bought it in a auction recently, so that's a really nice full circle moment. But anyway, sorry, to get back to the drums. Yeah, so I was playing a little bit at primary school, and then my parents thought, she seems serious about this. I had expressed interest in the flute, and that was a very short-lived phase. And I think they thought, well, we're not going to get you a kit if it's the same as the flute, where you just get into it and then fall out of love. But they thought, no, this seems serious. She seems to have talent and some natural ability. And so we got a little second-hand kit. Again, it was bits and bobs. I couldn't tell you. There was a red floor tom and a steel snare drum and some hi-hats, maybe one cymbal. And again, I really value the fact that it wasn't some state-of-the-art kit, because it just allowed me to be sure that I really wanted to pursue it. And that was enough to get me started. I played along with records, all of Songs in the Key of Life, Inner Visions, pretty much taught myself from those 2 Stevie Wonder records. I was very, very shy as a child. I've sort of got on top of it over the years. But as a child, yeah, I was very much, I would say, a happy loner. I still am, really, very happy loner with great friends, great people I work with. But that enabled me to sort of put my headphones on and really study the music. So I felt that I wanted to learn a little bit more, develop my playing before going out and playing in public. So yes, at the primary school, I did a couple of little performances, but there was no school band, you know, it was just a humble little local primary school. And then I went to a secondary school in Wimbledon, you know, that had better facilities, but it was an all-girls school. And at that stage, there wasn't much focus on drumming. There was a drum teacher, Stephen Hiscock, lovely guy, who really sort of begged me to continue lessons. I think I did a term or something with him, really liked him, but I just thought, no, I want to go and work on some stuff before I come back. And so we stopped those lessons, but he was great, and it just wasn't the right time for me. So I went away and listened to lots of records and taught myself. And at that school, I'd say there weren't that many opportunities. There are now. I occasionally pop back to that school, and people are doing great things, and there are ensembles and there are brilliant players. But I went up to the local boys' school, King's College, Wimbledon, where I now teach. I have done for 17 years, teach them the drums. And they had a brilliant department, and they called me in to play drums for what they called Soul Night. So they had a lot of different people. Marcus Mumford was performing, Ben Barnes, the Hollywood actor, he performed with my brother. There were lots of interesting people. And I played drums. We played a Sanborn tune and Al Green. So they got me in, which I thought was great, especially at an all-boys school, to say, look, there's this girl coming and playing. And I will always appreciate that opportunity, because that gave me the bug a little bit. I thought I still want to do some work, but yeah, it's really good to be able to perform in that situation. So yeah, that was, I suppose I was 16 then. So I started having lessons with Richard Coles, who was the drum teacher up at King's, I suppose when I was 15 or 16. It was all tied in with me performing at Soul Night. And again, it's nothing against Stephen Hiscock at my school. He was lovely and very, very encouraging. It was just something about the timing and where my head was at then. So I was having lessons with Rich, and you know, I'd turn up for a 1-hour lesson and I'd leave his place 4 hours later. We'd be chatting about music. Lovely guy. He'd send me away with 5 CDs, say, you know, listen to these in your own time, or copy them onto mini disc or whatever. Don't worry, I bought my own copies later. And yeah, he really got me into a lot of the players that I still love to this day. So Steve Gadd, Jeff Porcaro, Harvey Mason, Tony Williams, Steve Ferroni, all those players I got in via Rich sending me these CDs of music I loved. And at that stage, I wasn't sort of playing in public, but he said to me, have you ever thought about trying jazz? And I thought, well, I've heard jazz. My parents played me jazz. My dad took me to see Elvin Jones at Ronnie's, I think when I was 15 or 16. It went over my head, but it was really lovely of him to do that. And we stood in that weird sort of bar behind all the seating, and I just thought, wow, what's going on here then? Didn't quite get it, but it was an experience. And Rich said, why don't you try jazz? It's great for developing musicianship. You know, you're a very natural musician anyway, he said of me. But for developing phrasing on the kit and soloing and reacting to soloists as well, it would be good for you. So I said, okay. And he probably sent me home with Kind of Blue or something and said, just try playing along with So What and All Blues. And I did. And I've never looked back. I then was offered the house band in this jam session just before my 18th birthday. And as I said, I did that every other week for 7 years on and off, got to meet loads of musicians, got used to backing anyone who came up, any tune they wanted to do. And that was a good way into it in many ways. I'll let you in on well, it's not really a secret. That took a long time to develop because, as we all know, with anything we care about, we all really want to be as good as we can on our instrument or at whatever we're doing. So there's a lot of self-criticism. There's a danger of going down a rabbit hole of self-analysis and analysing your playing and berating yourself for something you did wrong on a gig. But I think ultimately we have to sort of say, well, hang on, there was an audience there. Did they enjoy it? Yes, they did. So that's probably the main thing. We all have stuff we want to work on, but if the audience is enjoying it and they aren't walking out mid-drum solo, that's a result. Another big thing for me and another big part of my development was a saxophonist, Mark Pullinger, who I had played with I played with at Soul Night, said, oh, there's this jazz club, the 606 in Chelsea, do you know it? And I was maybe 17 years old. He said, why don't you come with me, because I'm always there. And I went down to the 606 with him one night, and I believe Hamish Stewart was playing. I didn't know him at that stage. Of course, I had heard the Average White Band, but I hadn't made the association. And that became one of my favourite gigs, and I'd go pretty much every month when he was there. And as soon as I walked into the 606, Steve Ruby, the owner, was in the office, and Mark Pullinger said, this is Sophie Alloway, she's a drummer. And Steve was so nice to me. He said, oh, you're a drummer, are you? Well, you know, you're welcome anytime, no charge, just come in and enjoy what we have. And I just thought, that's brilliant. What a lovely way into that world. And then I started to meet all the musicians. So Ian Thomas was on drums, Steve Pearce on bass, and just brilliant musicians who I still know to this day. I even popped in on Sunday after my gig round the corner and a few of them were still there. So 24 years later, I'm still going there saying, hi, Hamish. But Ian Thomas was a massive connection for me. He was so kind to me. He sort of took me under his wing a little bit, and at that point he was living up in North London. I've always been Southwest London. And he said, well, Sophie, if you're really welcome to come up to my place. I can set up 2 kits, we can talk about drums. I was really nervous, very shy, and I think he spotted that, maybe because once upon a time he might have been like that himself, but he just thought, there's something there, she's really into it. And he invited me up many times. He was doing it with other drummers at the same time as well. A lot of guys I know said, he did that with me. And we went through loads of stuff that was far too basic for him to be bothered with. He was absolutely at the top of his game then, working for all kinds of A-list musicians. And he didn't mind at all having me around there for 2 or 3 hours just to say, this is a paradiddle and this is that. And I mean, really, I think of it now and just, why did he want to do that? Eternally grateful. Ian Thomas, one of my favourite drummers. Very, very kind guy and so generous. So he helped me massively. There are masses of people who've been so generous. Winston Clifford was another guy, Mike Mondesi. Ralph Salmons was lovely. There are just masses. It's risky to start naming names because I'll always forget people. But just honestly, my experience has been so welcoming, and everyone's shared their knowledge, and it's just been great. I've had a wonderful time so far. Yeah, so basically from that jam session scene, all kinds of musicians turned up. And I remember one guy, Theo Gordon, brought Roots Manuva down, the rapper, and said, you should check this girl out. She's interesting, really interesting drummer. So Theo brought Rodney down, real name, Roots Manuva stage name. And he thought, okay, yeah, maybe. Well, we have a drummer at the moment, but we'll keep her in mind. And a year or so later, the phone rang and, Rodney'd like to see how you get on playing the stuff. And I was thinking, well, I'm doing a lot of jazz. I love my soul and funk. But yeah, I had a couple of years playing drums with Roots Manuva, and, that took me on to later with Jules Holland. Jeff Beck, I spotted just when I was about to go on. I thought, blimey, does that mean Vinnie Colaiuta's here? But no, it was just Jeff Beck. He was there to check out Dave Gilmour, and there were interesting people there. So that was interesting, being in that, I suppose they call it a sound stage, and saying, oh my God, there's Dave Gilmour, and I can see Jeff Beck, and how do I sort of do what I do and stay cool? It was also going out live on BBC Two, and then there's the pre-recorded one. And, it's quite a lot to deal with for quite a shy person, but it was a great experience. And with him, I got to do a big main stage at Glastonbury, which was televised, and tour in Australia and New Zealand and around the UK as well. So that was great experience, something that was different. And meanwhile, I was also doing a lot of jazz gigs with loads of different people, mainly around London, lots of piano trio stuff, some groovier things, quartets with various sax players. So part of that 606 scene was just going and meeting musicians. I mentioned Winston Clifford. He was lovely at sort of saying, well, why don't you sit in on this gig? I'm playing with Dill Katz. Dill was so kind to me, still is actually. I'll go up and have a curry with him occasionally, and we'll watch Curb Your Enthusiasm or something, or some Wayne Shorter documentary, and just chat about life. But Winston and Dill both said, why don't you come and sit in, what tune you're comfortable playing? Great, okay. So I did that at the 606. I suppose I was 19, 20, 21, around that time. And if Julian Joseph was playing there, he'd say, Sophie, nice to see you. Do you want to come and sit in? Just really nice people who were very encouraging. And I suppose through that, I started to do more work, and then I'd find that someone had booked me, and then I was on stage with Jason Rebello, and thinking, although he was at the same school as my brother and me, he might be a few years older, possibly, so we didn't know each other. But just all these people were so welcoming, and they might not have thought I was a genius drummer. I don't know, they never said, but they were always nice and encouraging, and probably thought, well, she's on the right path, she's on a journey, and I respect that. So they were all really nice. And I've got to play with a lot of brilliant people over the years. Often older players have been very, very welcoming to me. So some people might have said in the past, but aren't there any gender issues? Like older guys, don't they just think, well, what are you doing playing the drums? I would say not at all. I can't even think of a bad experience. Everyone's been brilliant. Yeah, Dill Katz was great. Ray Russell, your good friend. All these people who were more experienced and possibly a bit older, more advanced in years, have just welcomed me in to play. And I've got into some great situations, at the 606, Ronnie Scott's, all kinds of festivals, jazz festivals. And even 2 days ago, I had 2 gigs on Monday. It's like the golden age again. And the first gig, I was there just setting up, and we were about to start, and this distinguished gentleman walked in, and I clocked him straight away. I thought, that's Bill Bruford. And I waved at him, and he sort of did a little bow, very polite, always the gentleman. And I thought, that's nice. And we had a chat afterwards. He stayed for the whole gig. He came up and said, I said, Bill, what you doing here? He said, well, I've heard your name for years and I wanted to come and check you out. And brilliant. I really like what you're doing. I thought, that's nice. So all these people, have just been really inviting and welcoming. Mornington Lockett was another one. Laurence Cottle. I do loads of playing with those guys. And they were my sort of heroes, with Ian Thomas on the drums. And, okay, it's taken a couple of decades, but the fact that they call me and I can call them to do my gigs, and we have a great time. We played on Sunday and we're playing next week. It's just, it's a real thrill for me to be in that situation. Yes, I've been playing with Rayner for 3 years now. Lovely guy, great to work with, really looks after us. I don't just mean in the culinary area, although yes, we do get well fed at all his gigs. He's a great guy, and he plays jazz piano for anyone who doesn't know. He takes it really, really seriously. He's a very busy boy on the radio and on the TV and writing his books and everything else. But he absolutely practices his piano. Now, we first met at the Ivy Club in West Street, the original one, because I've been playing with Joe Thompson, great piano player, for many, many years, 13 or 14 years. He's been the resident piano player since it opened 15 years ago. And Rayner used to pop in after doing some TV broadcast or a radio thing. And Jay and Joe went to university together many years ago, so they knew each other. And Joe would say, "Would you fancy sitting in? Come on, Sophie's here, and Rob Rickenberg's on bass. There'll be a friendly crowd." So Jay would come and play Take 5 or something. And at that stage, he had a quartet with no drums, no guitar. But Joe Thompson kept saying, well, why don't you get Sophie in? It would be great, really good for the time, and make it more solid, perhaps. No comment on Jay, of course. But so we've been doing that for 3 years. It's a great project. It's called Jazz Up the 80s. So Jay and his wife, Pat, who's a very good singer, take all kinds of songs from the 1980s that had jazzy elements, often players that we all know and love. Like I played with Roger Beaujolais 2 nights ago, the vibe player. And he was on some of that stuff. So there were always jazz musicians playing on these songs, and Jay and Pat decided to put a project together where we feature songs by Sting, Sade, and do our own arrangements. But it's really successful. All his gigs seem to sell out, and having a great time. My connection with Joe Thompson, he's a brilliant piano player, and he played for the Queen's 90th. He sort of has played at Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, and he's sort of been a trusted musician for those events. And he thought, I've got to get Sophie in. They wouldn't normally have drums. They wouldn't touch drums with a barge pole in Buckingham Palace, because people see drums and they think loud. They don't have to be, as we know. I get booked a lot because I'm quite a sensitive player when I need to be. I love John Bonham and those guys as much as the rest of them, but I am capable of sort of playing with dynamics. So I got to play in Buckingham Palace in that summer just before he became king. And there's a funny story there, because I had set up, and it's all high security, but everyone was really nice. Phones sort of have to be away, and I respect that. I'm certainly not someone who sits there on their phone anyway at the best of times. But so we started the gig. It was piano, sax and drums. So Prince Charles, as he was then, was going round the room, speaking to each person, making a little joke, and I was watching him. I was playing as well, I was focused on my drumming, but I just thought, that is an art, isn't it? To go round to each person, engage with them, make them feel special, have a little laugh, be interested in what they're doing. And I'm sure it's genuine as well, no matter how overwhelmed people get with one person after another. He went round to everyone, and as interestingly enough, there was a lovely woman there who said, "Sophie," and I thought, yes, I know you, and she comes to all of Shez Raja's gigs. So she said, yeah, I saw you at the 606 and I've seen you at Ronnie's. And it was just really nice. Those things happen a lot. I'm somewhere playing and someone who doesn't seem related to music will come up and say, "I've seen you play, you're brilliant." But anyway, so I was drumming, and Prince Charles was very, very close, maybe a few feet away in conversation. And we played take 5, and Joe, the piano player, said, "Soph, do a solo." Because he knew from all these years of playing that I could do a drum solo and be very controlled. So I did a drum solo on take 5. You know, Joe Morello, brilliant, lovely dynamics as well. I was playing with brushes and I thought, drum solo, but Prince Charles is just there and he's talking to someone. And I did the solo, and what was really nice for me was that he was able to continue. I thought, if he looks over at any point, if he's distracted, it's game over for me. I've sort of failed in my duty at that moment. And he didn't. And I thought, wow, that's really something to do a drum solo when the Prince is a few feet away and not disturb the event. I thought, that's good. I'm doing okay. Well, a lot of people ask me all the time, actually, about being a female musician, probably particularly a drummer in what seems like a male-dominated world. And honestly, these days, so many women come up to me at gigs saying, "That's so amazing, I'm really inspired, I want to start drumming." And I think a lot are interested in whether there have been any barriers for me. And I think it's important to tell people that my experience overwhelmingly has been positive. And bearing in mind that I've been doing this for 20-ish years, a bit more than 20 years I've been out there. And sure, people have come up to me in pubs, guys who have had a couple of pints and said something that I might think, yeah, well, but, you know, I didn't feel targeted because I was female. I think those people will say something to the male guitarist that seems a bit silly as well. It's just part of being in a pub with these people. But no, I've had a very positive experience. I feel respected by people of all ages, and I'm not bigging myself up unnecessarily. I'm aware I have work to do in my playing, but just, yeah, people of all ages, all backgrounds have been really encouraging to me. And, you know, now I have a bit more of a reputation. They're still being nice and saying, "Wow, you're doing great things, and I really enjoyed this thing you did." Or I got to play drums for all the BBC Young Jazz musicians in November. So backing all the players and getting to know them, that was fascinating. And no, I've had loads of experiences. Whether I've had more opportunities because I'm female or fewer, I'll never know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to kind of go in disguise as a big hairy man and see how different it feels. But I think as much as I might have lost work or been overlooked for work, I've probably gained it as well, because I've popped into someone's head when they're thinking, "Oh, I need a drummer for this thing," or, "Oh, I remember Sophie on this." I think it's all balanced out in the end, and I have no hard feelings with anyone, really. I think I'm just trying to do this thing, give it the respect it deserves, get better as a player, be nice to everyone, be open-minded, and I feel that's come back to me as well, which is a happy story. Although I always say I'm mainly a live drummer, working for a lot of different people, I do some good studio work. I've played drums in a lot of top studios, like Abbey Road and Mark Knopfler's studio, and a lot of with good people, producers like Kipper, and all these people are lovely, and we have a laugh and we take our work seriously. And part of that, I suppose, is I've been lucky enough to do a little bit of TV work as well, and a series that seems to be popular in America, it's on PBS, is Ridley, which is Adrian Dunbar's detective series. He's sort of a singing detective. And Adrian Dunbar, a lovely guy, great to work with. I've done both series of Ridley, and I'm in every episode just as a drummer. Luckily, there's no acting part. And so with Ben Foster, the composer, and a lovely band. So we go up to Air Studios, George Martin's old place, and we record all the music for the episodes, and then Adrian Dunbar comes in and he does his vocal tracks. He's often there in the studio as well. He's a good guy, really good fun, good laugh. And then I've done also quite a lot of the music, the cue music in here myself. So they'll send the files and then I'll record and, send it off, and that ends up on the TV show. But then we go up to Manchester and film the episodes. So we've all been in all the episodes. And I get messages from people in America saying, "We've seen Ridley, we love it. Is there a new series?" I think, I don't know, the second series isn't even out here yet, but I hope there will be. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I'm still doing what I do, always trying to get better. I think it's important that we sort of manage to inspire ourselves. Of course, I have moments where I think I'm just going to go off and play tennis for a week, or I'm just going to go to the gym. I don't really want to play. But if I have a night off, I tend to be out checking out bands. I like to go to Ronnie's or the 606, see what's happening. And then even the other night, I got back from Ronnie's. I came in here and I practiced for an hour and a half. So I take it very seriously. And I have to make sure I'm match fit for all the work that's coming up. And a lot of people ask me about the Lydian Collective project. They seem to enjoy it. Yes, we're still playing, still working on stuff, still doing some festivals. Hopefully there'll be a third album at some point. But those videos from the last decade are still really popular and reach a lot of people. So, yep, still doing that. Doing lots of fusion playing, jazz, bit of recording, some rock as well. And just, yeah, long may it continue. I'll keep working on my stuff. Hope that people keep booking me as the decades go by, and that I'm, physically okay to play. I definitely try and eat well and keep fit and try not to injure myself on the tennis court, because it's all part of it for me. It's not the easiest road, and it's a long road. So I just try and make sure I'm motivated. So yeah, looking forward to carrying on as I am.